Let's just start on our backs, actually. Legs can be out long or knees can be bent. Okay, so it's maybe been a long time since you laid on the floor. And maybe today you've been, doing multiple things before now. So just take this as a moment to check in. To check in with your ability to receive the support of the ground. And maybe the ability of parts to let go into the support of the ground. Let's bring our attention into the right heel if your legs are out long, and into the sole of that right foot if your knees are bent, feet standing on the floor. And just notice the connection with the floor, the pressure through the foot. Okay. Notice the pressure through the back of the calf. Back of the thigh. The weight through that right hip. And just take a moment to take in all of that right leg, right hip. Maybe in your mind's eye, you draw that right leg as you would a stick figure. So draw that leg, just notice the thickness, the weight, the darkness of that line. And then we're going to move our attention over into the left foot or heel if the leg's out long. And let your attention move up that left lower leg, that left upper leg, and into that left hip and left side of the pelvis. And just take another moment to take in all of that left leg for a moment. And again, in our mind's eye, you might choose to draw it like you would a stick figure. So draw that left leg. And then let your attention expand to take in both the right and the left legs simultaneously. Take in the whole pelvis. Let your attention move up to where your low back arch starts and where it ends. And then where the back of you makes contact with the floor again. And as you move up, let your attention move to the shoulders and up into the head. So again, just taking in this midline, pelvis to head. And you might draw that midline like you would a stick figure. Take a moment to take in the midline, the right leg, the left leg. And then bring your attention into the right shoulder blade, right upper arm, elbow, wrist, and hand. Just noticing that whole right arm. Again, you might choose to draw that right arm like the line of a stick figure. And then let your attention move over into the left shoulder blade, shoulder, left upper arm, elbow, lower arm, wrist, and hand. Taking in that whole left arm, shoulder to fingertips. And drawing that left arm of the stick figure. And then let your attention expand out, taking in both arms, the midline, the right and the left leg. Take a couple breaths just to zoom out and see that stick figure to this point. And then bring your attention into where you feel your head rest on the floor. And you're going to draw the final piece of your stick figure in your mind's eye. And that is the impression that the back of the skull makes. And take one more moment to take in this stick figure drawing. That is this body, this breath, and this mind right now, in this moment. And let your attention kind of zoom out. We're going to lift the arms up and just bring the palms together. You could choose to just have the palms together, or you could choose to interlace the fingers. You could choose to keep pointer fingers extended. Kind of try each one on for size and just notice what you notice in terms of what has you sort of feel more connected from the hands down to your shoulders and shoulder blades and how they contact the floor. And then we're simply going to reach the hands towards the ceiling. You'll feel how your shoulder blades kind of slide around the sides of the ribs towards your armpits. And then that back, those back ribs get heavy on the floor. And then you're going to let the hands come down towards you again without bending the elbows. And we're just going to reach and relax a few times. And just notice what you notice. Maybe notice that you hold your breath in order to reach. Maybe notice that your head presses back in response to the reach. Maybe notice that your back arches. Okay, whatever you notice, try a couple and see if that thing you were noticing, if it can quiet or change in some way. Okay, and then let that go. We're going to keep the arms reached towards the ceiling so the shoulder blades aren't resting on the floor. Okay, think about lengthening through the back of that neck. And then what we're going to do is you're going to reach that left wrist, kind of trying to roll over to the right. And then you're going to reach that right wrist and roll yourself over to the left. So you'll come on to the right shoulder blade as you go to the right, and the left shoulder blade as you go to the left. Thinking of kind of reaching that wrist over and past the hand that's on the bottom. Feel how that starts to roll the rib cage. You can kind of go as little or as much as you want to, side to side. Notice at what point the pelvis starts to lift up and you get heavy onto one hip. Okay, and then start to explore kind of creating a figure eight with those hands above your chest, and just let your body, the rest of it, just kind of follow the movement of those hands and arms in that figure eight. Kind of play with rotating, so one arm is on top and one arm is on the bottom, rather than them staying east to west in terms of orientation. Find a bit of north-south. And just let the rest of your body follow the rhythm of this figure eight. And the next time the hands come over the chest, just relax, take the arms down to the ground. Take the legs out long or stand the feet up. Choose whichever it was that you did to start the class. And take a second just to take in this body and notice with this stick figure how you would draw it in your mind's eye. Now, after having done some simple movement, okay, and then we're going to take the hands out at shoulder height. A little bit lower actually than shoulder height, but so we make this kind of like lowercase T. Palms are open to the ceiling, okay? And then we're gonna roll those right fingertips into the palm of the hand. You're gonna flex the wrist. You're gonna bend the elbow, bringing the hand towards the shoulder or the chest. And when it reaches it, you're gonna open up the hand and slide that palm across, reaching that top right arm out towards the left fingertips. And again, let things follow it. So let the head turn, let the rib cage roll. You might have one hip lift off the ground and the knees go over to the left. That's okay. And then you're going to unroll and take yourself out long again. We're going to do that one more time with that right hand. So curl in the fingers, making a fist. And then flex the elbow, bringing that fist to the shoulder or chest. Open up those fingers, reach across, bring the palms onto one another. And then to go back, if you want, you can take the top hand, bring those fingers to the floor, and just trace a semicircle over the head, rolling you back onto your back. Okay, just take a second here. And notice your left and right sides. Again, notice this stick figure. You might feel like one half of it is darker or more prominent right now than the other half. And then we're going to go through the curling of the fingers here on the other side. So you're going to curl in those left fingers. You might let your gaze turn to actually follow the hand. You bend the elbow and that fist comes to the shoulder, chest. You're going to open up the hand. Slide the palm across, let your gaze follow that top arm, reaching it out, and then unwind and bring yourself back onto your back. One more time, curl those fingers and make a fist, bend the elbow, fist comes to the chest, now reach across that chest, slide it out long, and then we're going to take that top hand, it's going to arc over top of the head to bring us back onto our back. And take a second here to just notice the left and the right half and the stick figure that is this body, this breath, and this mind. Okay, we're going to take one of our blocks and place it, we're going to place it on the wider kind of width of the block so that we're kind of 2 fists distance. If you don't have a block, you could use a folded blanket or a foam roller with a towel or blanket around it, or a book with a folded towel around it to create kind of a taco. And we want the block sort of halfway between our pelvis and our knees, okay? So from here, what you're going to do is take your feet a little bit further out from the pelvis, heels roughly in line with your sit bones. So you might find that with the block, that your knees are just a hair wider than what your heels are here, okay? Then what we're going to start to do is press into that block. You might bring your hands to the front of the hip bones, okay? And we're going to press, and we're actually going to do that with an exhale. And then when you inhale, we're simply going to relax that press. Okay, you can exhale through the nose or you could exhale through the mouth. Gently press into the block, building some tension along the inner seam of the legs. As you inhale, just notice if the belly moves a lot more than the ribs, and see if you can slow down the breath in through the nose so that we get some more movement of each of our ribs to the side and back into the floor. As you exhale, press into the block. You might feel how your lower abs kind of help with that exhalation, and tension sort of moves up that front core wall, letting those ribs move in towards one another as the air leaves you. Inhale, relax the press. Think about moving the ribs to the side and back towards the floor. And if you're having a hard time feeling or sensing any movement back of the ribs towards the floor, you could take the arms up. Think about reaching from those shoulder blades, elbows. You could even come back to that kind of Charlie Angels that we did at the beginning, thinking of reaching those shoulder blades around off the back of the rib cage. You'll feel how the ribs get heavier back towards the floor. That can help us on the inhale get a bit more movement back as we breathe in towards the floor, rather than it being all belly forward. One more time, exhale. Press into the block. Good. Inhale here. Okay, one other thing you could try with the hands is bringing them to the thighs. Okay. And as you inhale, gently kind of press the hands up the thighs towards the knees. For some of us, that can help us get more expansion of those back ribs towards the floor. And then as you exhale, squeeze the block and press the feet through the floor. So the pelvis starts to lift up off the ground, and we feel our legs do the lift and not our low back. So if anything, our low back is a little bit long here, okay? And then we're gonna lower down. So let's do that again. We're gonna inhale, think about sliding the thighs towards the knees. Expand side to side with those ribs and back towards the floor. Exhale, press into that block, press the feet through the floor. Lift the hips, feel the legs work to lift the pelvis here, not our low back. And there's some tone in the abs, but the abs again haven't kind of gripped to lift us up, and then we're going to release down. We're going to do that 2 more times. So moving with your own breath. Inhale, slide the hands up the thighs. Really think about breathing back into your waist, moving those back ribs towards the floor. As you exhale, gently start to press into the block. Feet press into the floor. Hips don't need to lift high, but we want to feel the legs lifting us up. Inner thigh, outer thigh, back of thigh, front of thigh, and then lower down. You're going to do that 1 more time with your breath. And release those hips down. Okay, we're going to take that block that was between our thighs, and we're going to place it underneath our right foot. Okay, so we've got our right foot on a block, our left foot is on the floor here. So we've got this kind of asymmetrical bridge set up. If you found that having that block between the thighs helped sort of feel more whole leg coordination, and helped you feel really stable through your hips and like your low back wasn't having to work to hold your pelvis up, feel free to use the block again. If you're not sure the difference it made, try a couple without it. So we've got our one foot on the block, one foot on the floor. Hands are going to come back to those thighs, okay? And if your limb length, torso length kind of dictates, you might find that your feet need to be a little bit closer to the pelvis in order to reach the thighs. Others of us might find that we need to kind of prop the head and shoulders a little bit so that the hands can reach the thighs. So you can play with those different configurations so that quite easily you can get kind of fingers around the front flesh of the thighs. We're going to inhale, think about sliding the hands towards the knees. Stretching the back of our shirt, sides of our shirt with our breath in. Exhale. If you've got the block, you're going to gently squeeze it. If not, you're just going to press the feet through the floor. No need to use the block if you really feel your legs lift you. You don't feel your low back or around your sacrum kind of gripping to get your hips off the floor. Okay, and then we're going to lower straight back down to that floor right from that hip crease. Nice long spine. Couple of times here. So inhale, moving with your own breath. Reach hands towards the knees. Exhale, press feet through the floor. Hips don't need to lift up really high. We just really want to feel like our legs have us here. And then lower that hip crease towards the floor. 2 more with your own breath. Lower towards the floor. Slight change with these last 2. So once you lift the hips, if you feel quite sturdy here, you're going to keep the foot that's on the block pushing, 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 and you're going to lift that other knee towards the chest, okay? If you find that that foot you lift off the floor, that hip kind of wants to drop, then keep that foot on the floor. Just bring as much work into that block leg as you can. And then that foot's going to go back to the floor and we're going to lower down. We shouldn't feel our low back keeping us lifted. We're going to keep the muscles of our hips and our legs supporting us there. So 1 more like that. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale at the top. Exhale, press through that block. You might bring that knee to the chest. You could take that leg all the way to the ceiling. Bend the leg, bring it down, lower the hips. Okay, we're going to slide that block over to the other side. But actually, before we bring that foot onto the block, take a second, go back to whatever position you were in to start the class, whether that was knees bent, feet on the floor, the legs out long. And just take a second here to take in the impression or the stick figure that you would draw in your mind's eye right now in this moment. Notice where weight and pressure have changed, the thickness or heaviness, lightness and spaciousness is different from when you first noticed how you received either the support of the floor or the sense of parts of you letting go into the floor and the ground beneath you. And then we're going to bring that block underneath our other foot. Okay, hands are on those thighs. So we're going to inhale, think about reaching the hands towards the knees. Exhale, press through the floor and the block to lift the hips. Again, we don't need to lift super high. I want you to think about staying long through your low back here rather than arching the low back. Okay, and then lower down, flex at the hip crease. A couple more times just with your breath. Move those ribs as you inhale. Exhale, press, let the legs and the hips lift us up. Lower back down to the floor. This one, if you want to add lifting that opposite foot off the floor, you're welcome to. Inhale here, move those ribs. Expand back into that floor. Press, press, press. Lift that leg if that works for you today. Otherwise, just get as much work through the back of that leg that's on the block as you can. Okay. And then lower down. One more like that. Inhale. So just progressively increasing the load through our legs. Exhale. Exhale. Press down. You can use that other hand and provide some resistance that can help keep the pelvis nice and stable and keep the work in the legs. Lower that foot and lower those hips. Take the block out from underneath the foot. Just take a second here, again, to notice what you notice. We're going to toe heel out the feet. So now our knees are in line with our hips. But when you look down at your mat, you're going to see your feet are wider than your hips. So we're biasing a little bit of internal rotation. So if you look, your outer seam of your pants have kind of rolled more to the tops of the thighs, and the inner seams have kind of rolled away from you, your head. We're going to take the block narrower, so more like one fist width. Place it down closer to the pubic bone than it was before, okay? And you're going to start to just build tension with your exhalation into that block. Inhale, hold that tension. Exhale, build some tension into that block. Think of that exhale moving from the pelvis, expelling the air all the way up to the throat. So notice if the tendency is to cinch in somewhere further up from the pelvis, creating a pressure down and up, rather than thinking of like we're a toothpaste tube and we're on our exhale, moving that toothpaste, that air up and out the mouth and or nose, okay? Inhale, think wide ribs, breathe into the back. If you want, you can use that reach towards the ceiling to help get more sense of the inhale, moving back into the floor rather than extending the belly upwards. Keep that bit of tension that you create with the exhale as you inhale, stretching us into some other places as we breathe in. We're going to do 2 more exhales. One more. With This exhale, you're going to press the feet through the ground. Lift the hips just a little bit. And then those inner thighs working. Some tone through the front abs, outer hips, butt, and then we're going to lower down. Take that block out and keep the feet where they are. And we're going to simply roll to the inside and the outside edge of the feet, taking those knees side to side. Okay, have a look at where your knees kind of end up. And then what you're going to do is place your blocks so they're on this higher height. And you might only need one, or you might, actually we'll just do one side. So let's keep one block and figure out that positioning so that when you internally rotate and take the knees to the opposite side, that trail leg, the inner thigh shin kind of comes to that block, and you're going to create a little bit of a press down into it, lifting that hip and buttock a little bit more off the floor. Press, 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 press. Watch that you're not extending the spine. Find this movement of the leg and the hip. And then come back up. Inhale here. And then we're going to exhale. Build tension into that block. Complete that exhalation. You might pause and keep that breath out for a moment. And then inhale, come back to center. I'm going to do that 2 more times. Exhale, find the block. Build tension into it as you complete that exhalation. Pause, hold the breath out for a moment or 2. And then when you get that urge to take a breath in, you'll float the knees back up to center. We're going to do that 1 more time. Inhale here. Exhale. Hold the breath out. You feel the desire to take a breath in. Go for it. Bring the legs to center. Take a second here, and then we're going to move that block. And be okay with kind of experimenting. Maybe you need to have it more on your thigh and have nothing touching your shin. Maybe you need a bit more shin and less thigh. Kind of play with. I find I need on this side a little bit more kind of clarity of the thigh pressing in. Those knees are going to come up through center, and then we're going to take the knees over to the side. That trail leg connects with that block. Exhale here, press into that block. Low back is long, so we're not arching our back. Think about arching and rotating and reaching that knee towards the block and the floor, and then inhale, come up to center. So you're going to move on an exhale, build tension into that block on the exhalation. When that exhale finishes, pause, hold the breath out, keep that built tension pressing into the block. And when you feel the desire to take a breath in, nice and slow through the nose, float the legs back up through center. We're going to do that 2 more times. Press, 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 press. And then when you feel that desire to take an inhale, go for it nice and slow through the nose. Feel the back ribs move towards the floor. The ribs widen as you breathe in. 1 last time, exhale. Press, 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 press. Hold the air out. Inhale back up through center. You're going to scoot the blocks out of the way. Find that original resting position that you started today's practice in. Just take a second to notice what you notice about this body, this breath, this mind, in this moment. Okay, we're going to roll onto our side. I'm going to grab a little drink of water. And we're going to come up to a tall kneeling position. So if you want a little extra padding underneath your knees, you could fold your yoga mat a couple of times, depending on the flooring that's underneath you. Or you could place a towel or blanket underneath the knees and the shins. So just come to a tall kneeling. Imagine like you're standing on your feet, okay? And then from here, all we're going to do, your back feet, your toes could be tucked under. So they could be here, okay? Or the tops of the feet can rest on the floor. Okay, so whichever works just fine. And then what we're going to do is we're going to sit back, hinge at our hips, so our upper body comes forward. If you think about it, if this block is our pelvis, think of the pelvis tipping forward on those femurs and then coming back up vertical. Okay, so the top of the pelvis, if you stick your fingers in that hip crease, as you sit down, the top ASIS of the pelvis kind of pinch the fingers, and then we rise back up. Okay. So from the side, what it looks like is we're staying nice and long through that spine, sitting back, getting a nice little stretch to the back of the hips and those glutes when we're standing and or sitting sometimes, working on projects or on tasks in front of us. Some of us start to get a lot of tension and kind of gripping in the buttocks and press the pelvis forward to sort of mitigate gravity pushing down on us. So this is a great way to start to stretch out those glutes and the back of our hip capsules. Okay, so we're going to take a block or two. Everybody's going to be a little different, but I want you to look at the width between your heels right now. And you'll put a block or two in there so that it's the distance that your heels are apart right now. And you'll sit back and come up. Okay? Do a couple, just see how that feels. You might inhale to sit back and exhale, pressing the knees and shins into the floor to rise back up. Okay, one more here. Okay, so now we're gonna go one click wider, okay? So you're gonna take your heels a little bit wider than what your knees are, okay? Setting up those blocks so that you've got pressure on the inside of those heels, filling that space. And again, you're gonna sit back towards those hips. This time we're biasing a little bit of internal rotation as we sit back. So as you sit back, hands can come to the floor. Hopefully we start to feel how those sit bones or the bottom of the pelvis widens. okay? And I'm actually going to invite us to, on our exhale, sit down. And then inhale, rise up. At the top of the inhale, feel how those sit bones get a little bit narrower. Exhale, hinge forward, sit back and down. Feel that pelvic outlet widen, those sit bones widen. Inhale, come up. Exhale, sit down. Try not to arch the low back. Let the sit bones widen. Inhale, come up. And you might not go all the way down to the heels, depending on how much tension you've got in the front of the thighs. But down here, we're stretching the front of the thighs. We're stretching our butt. Inhale, come up. Exhale down. One more. And inhale up. Good. Okay, you're going to scoot those blocks out of the way. We're going to come onto our hands and knees. My kids are home from spring break, so that's what they need. I'll text it to you. Okay. So we're going to come onto our hands and knees. Keep your blocks handy, okay? So on your hands and knees, I want you to play with where you put your hands and where you put your knees, okay? So start with them a little closer to one another and see if having them closer to one another has you kind of feel the shape and where your spine is more clearly, okay? Play with maybe the hands go a little wider than shoulder width. Okay, maybe the knees go a little narrower, a little wider. Kind of play with a couple different positions, and I want you to settle on your hands and knees where there's the most clarity in your brain in terms of the shape that your legs, spine, and arms are making. Okay, from here, whatever shape it is, placement of your hands and your knees that you've settled on, I want you to imagine that the crown of your head is gently resting on a wall. And if you're in a space where you could actually have the crown of that head resting on a wall, I'm going to encourage you to do that, okay? The other thing you could play with is taking one of your blocks and placing it on your back, on your rib cage, so that you start to have a felt sense of like where the head is, where the rib cage is. And then we're going to focus just on the pelvis. So we're going to, if we had a tail, whatever tail is kind of popping into your mind today off the end of your tailbone, whether that's a squirrel tail or a squiggly pigtail or big bushy foxtail, I want you to take that tail up towards the ceiling without moving your head and without moving your rib cage. And then I want you to take that tail down towards the floor. Okay, so sad tail. I want you to inhale, sad tail. Exhale, happy tail. Okay, you might on your sad tail bring your feet together. Take your feet apart on your happy tail. Again, keep that block on the rib cage, crown of the head gently lengthening and kissing into the wall. Exhale, happy tail, feet go wide. Inhale, sad tail, feet come together. You could pause after your inhale for a moment or two, and then exhale. And again, pause after your exhale for a moment or two. Inhale. Exhale. Let's do 3 more breaths. 3 more inhales, 3 more exhales. And then come to just a neutral spine. So you don't have a sad tail, you don't have a happy tail, you're halfway in between. Okay? And now where that block is, we're gonna move the rib cage. Okay, so the pelvis is gonna stay where it is. Sometimes I like taking a block onto the pelvis so I can feel where it is, or if you happen to at home have a chair or like a coffee table that you could get your feet under so your sit bones could be in contact with something, that can help us kind of keep the pelvis where it is. And then you're gonna just move your belly button towards the floor and away from the floor. So the space between the 2 blocks is what is moving. Belly button moves towards the floor and away from the floor. Towards the floor and away from the floor. Couple more times. Really see if you can kind of hone in to that area of the belly button. Okay, 1 more. Inhale the belly button up. You might exhale the belly button down, or vice versa. Okay, let that go. Now I want you to move the brick that is on the rib cage. So it goes towards the floor and away from the floor. Towards the floor and away from the floor. The brick on the pelvis. The belly button we were moving a bit ago, it's staying the same. You're just moving that brick that's on the rib cage towards the floor and away from the floor without bending the elbows. Okay, so now you're going to find neutral, kind of halfway in between that happy tail, sad tail, halfway in between belly button up and down, halfway in between that block on your rib cage with it towards the floor and away from the floor. And now you're going to just take your head and look to your knees, and then look out past your fingertips. Look to your knees, look out past your fingertips. Differentiating the various segments of our spine. Okay, you're going to look just past the fingertips, and then you're going to turn and look to the left and to the right. Again, keeping the other blocks right where they are. Okay, let that go. You're going to take the blocks off. Okay, if you found that your wrists were starting to hurt there, you might want to bring the hands up onto the blocks. That's going to shift more weight back into the legs. Okay, if you found that you had a hard time kind of differentiating and feeling a certain part of your spine, play with, like, maybe the blocks need to be underneath your knees and your forearms need to be on the floor. Maybe you need to have your knees closer together and closer to the hands or the blocks. Kind of explore, but we're just going to take a moment here, moving on our own breath, just moving between some cat-cow articulations. But I want you to think of starting from the tailbone, okay, and having it move the spine in a certain direction, and then it take the spine in the other direction. So rather than hinging through the middle of our spine for cat-cow. We're going to take the tail, then the belly button, then the rib cage, then we're going to look at the knees. We're going to keep all parts of our spine in this position, and then I'm going to unwind the other way, moving to happy tail, then the belly button follows, then the rib cage follows, then my gaze follows. Then I'm going to keep the parts of my spine here, start with the tail, and it's going to go sad tail, belly button, rib cage, gaze. Okay, so moving segment by segment. Wait until the area feels tension and it being tugged by the piece above or below it that's moving before it goes. Let each part of the spine wait its turn. Okay, one more time, each direction. Let the tension help you move into areas where you don't typically like to move. Okay, then find neutral spine. You'll scoot those blocks out of the way. We're going to make our way onto our back. Come to that original kind of resting position that you started class in, and just take a second here. Get in your mind's eye and just draw this stick figure. Notice how the sensations and the pulsations of this body, of this breath, of this mind in this moment. Okay, roll onto your side. We're going to come up to a seated position. So you're going to use your two blocks and you're going to stack them on top of one another, or you might bring them up to this height, or you might bring them up to this height. Okay. Alternatively, if this height isn't working for you, then you can sit in a chair and you'll put your feet on the blocks into one of these heights so that we get some flexion at that hip joint. Okay. So you decide where you need to be right now. Coming into the supported squat. Okay, the feet are out a little bit, the knees are out a little bit, but there shouldn't be any pinchiness in the hips. Okay. What we're going to do is bring our hands onto the inside edge of the knees and think about reaching the fingertips forward so that our rib cage moves back a little bit. So that we think of stacking the back ribs over the back of the pelvis. So there's no extension or sway back through our low back or spine. So we're reaching kind of forward with those fingertips, helping that ribs move back. So think nice tall spine from the back of the pelvis, back of the rib cage, back of the skull. Okay, and we're going to inhale here, thinking of moving those ribs wide and also breathing back. Not belly, but moving the ribs. Exhale, just relax. Inhale here. Exhale, just relax. Okay, we're going to take one hand and bring it to our chest. That hand that's on the inside of the knee, it's going to reach and we'll rotate and then we'll come back. We're going to reach and rotate. Okay, then we're going to take that hand that's on our chest, open it up, bring it behind our head without touching it. Keep reaching, reaching, reaching that hand, getting the elbow maybe to the inside of that knee or the bicep. Okay, then we're going to unbend that elbow, bend the elbow, bring the hand to the chest, bring ourselves in. That hand comes to the inside of the knee. We're going to bring the opposite hand to the chest. We're going to reach, 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 reach. Feel how that rotates us. Open towards the other side. We're going to open up that hand, bend the elbow, bring it behind the head. Okay, think about staying open, open, open through the chest. Gaze can be down at that knee or in the direction of that elbow or straight forward. Open up, bring it back to the chest. A couple more times each side. Reach, bend, straighten, bend, come back to center, other hand. Reach, open, bend, straighten, bend. One more time each side. Reach, last time. Reach, open, bend, open. Both hands. Think of reaching both hands forward. Send that rib cage back nice. Breath in here. Ribs moving wide and back. Exhale, relax. Let's hinge at those hips, so bring the top of that pelvis towards the top of the femurs. Reach those fingertips a little bit. Inhale here, wide ribs, back ribs. Exhale, relax. One more time. Inhale, wide ribs, back ribs. You might feel a stretch of stuff. Those anti-gravity muscles at the back of us. Exhale, relax. You're going to bring those hands forward to the floor. Inhale here. Exhale, weight through the heels. You're going to press and lift the hips. The knees don't need to straighten. We're going to spin the feet around so they're parallel rather than turned out. Sink back, weight in the heels, hips lower. Exhale, press the heels through the ground. Lift the hips, keep the torso connected to the tops of the thighs. Lower down, hands can reach forward, hands find the floor, hips lift up, torso and thighs stay glued together. One last time, lower the hips, reach the hands forward, hands to the floor, lift the hips, sink down, shift the weight back onto the blocks, sitting up nice and tall. We're going to scoot those blocks out of the way, make our way onto our back. Keep the blocks nearby and handy though. And we're going to come into our final kind of resting pose today of today's practice. And we're going to use our blocks and simply elevate the hips. So hands on the thighs. We're going to inhale like we did earlier, pressing and sliding the thighs away and towards the knees. Exhale, feet press into the floor, hips lift up. Whatever that height is, we're going to slide the block underneath. And then let the pelvis come to rest on that block. We want to make sure that the whole sacrum is supported, okay? If you want to kind of bias a bit more length through your low back, you might scoot the block towards the tailbone and let the waistband kind of hang off the block and towards the floor. Okay, so if you know you tend to have tension in your low back, this is a way to start to relieve that. Then you might also toe heel out the feet and bring the other block between the thighs. Okay, now if you're somebody that knows they tend towards being a butt gripper, maybe you want to move the block a little bit up so the waistband, or like the tag of your pants, is supported and the sitting bones hang off the block a little bit more. Same thing with toe heeling out the feet and placing that block between the inner thighs. Okay, so, and I invite you to try both, because maybe you're not one or the other. We tend to do some of all the things some of the time. So depending on what you've been working on, how intently you've been focused, you might be using parts to keep you upright and managing with gravity as best you can, and using excessive either low back tension or lower glute external rotator tension. Just nice, relaxed breath here. Feel your feet on the floor. Again, as you inhale and exhale, let's focus more on moving the ribs, creating space for those lungs, opposed to moving the belly. So you're welcome to stay here if you would like to. Alternatively, you're going to press the feet through the floor, just unweight that pelvis and bring it to the ground, and toe heel in those feet. Take that block out, extend those legs out. You might want to place the blocks at your sides if you've come off of them, just so they're supporting the elbows, bringing them a little up, biasing some internal rotation of the shoulder and widening kind of our back body a little bit. And like we did at the beginning of class, bring your attention into your right heel, lower leg, upper leg, right hip. Taking that whole right leg here for a moment. Again, if you were to draw it in your mind's eye like a stick figure, notice the length, the weight, the density, to which you would draw that right leg. And bring your attention into your left heel, left lower leg, left upper leg, left hip, taking that whole left leg. Again, what would be the weight, density, length, texture of this left leg if you were to draw it like a stick figure? Kind of notice where both legs meet, the pelvis. Start to draw the midline of your stick figure. And you get up to the top of that midline, to the throat, to the top of that neck. Bring your attention into the right shoulder blade, shoulder, arm, elbow, wrist, hand. Draw that right arm. Notice that left shoulder blade, left shoulder, upper arm, lower arm, wrist and hand. And draw that left arm. Take in your stick figure so far. Legs, midline, arms. Finally draw the head of the stick figure. For the next few breaths, just allowing your mind's eye to focus on this stick figure. The weight, density, length, each of the lines. I'm going to invite you to continue to rest here for a couple, maybe 5 minutes if you've got that space in your day. Om Shanti Shanti Peace.